thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Overall HR. And today I'm super excited about our guest. It's someone that I consider a friend now. We met this year, and who she is the very essence of how she operates her business, how she treats people, because I truly believe it takes a special person to not only work in this industry, but operate an agency in this industry. So rather than me take the time to introduce her, I'll have her introduce herself. Katie, do you care to tell us about you and what you do and how you make this world a better place?
Well, thank you, Chase. Sure. First of all, I appreciate the fact that you have allowed me to be on the podcast. This is the first time for me, so I'm a little nervous, but we're going to push right on through. My name is Katie Farthing. I am the State Farm agent in Lancaster, Kentucky. We're a small community. We've got about 3,500 in the city and about 17,000 in the county. But I grew up in this industry and just have fallen in love with the opportunity to work with the people in my community, my customers, and am growing my team.
Okay, perfect. Well, I appreciate that, and I have to tell our listeners, Katie, if Overall HR had a VIP club, Katie would get a shirt because she's always liking or sharing or talking about the podcast. So as we've had conversations, I'm thinking, hey, like Katie, would you like to be on the podcast? Because what you do for our listeners, insurance is a very broad term. There's all different types of insurance. Tell us a little bit about the type of insurance, like I guess the sector that you work in, if you don't care.
Sure. So I'm primarily personal lines. Everybody knows the brand State Farm, and we're well known for selling auto insurance. But a lot of people don't realize we can also do all types of homeowners, renters, farm policies. I love to work with small businesses in my community to make sure they have appropriate coverages. We also sell life insurance, some disability products, and we're actually able to sell mutual funds and securities products as well. And so a lot of people don't realize what that means, which what we
Mm-hmm.
strive for is to be a one-stop shop for the everyday consumer, right? You've got a
Mm-hmm.
small business, maybe working out of your home, but you also want to make sure that you're protected on your personal lines cars. But we also can make sure that your family is protected with a family protection plan with life insurance. And a lot of people do not have the disability coverage that they need either, and so that's
Mm-hmm.
something that we can help with as well.
Okay, some of that I didn't realize that you do either, because it's crazy to me, because even like I can be honest with myself and say I don't really understand insurance. And I would say that a lot of your customers probably don't understand it either.
No. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, we know that our customers don't understand insurance and we don't expect you to. It is our job to educate and teach and offer the products. And so that's what we really focus on, is trying to take care of the customers and getting a personal connection with them so that we
Mm-hmm.
understand what they need. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
just offer something to everybody. We want to make sure it's something that fits their needs.
Absolutely. Well, and that's something that I have picked up on with you and getting to know you, is that you're really good at teaching concepts. And that's important. So how do you find that important, and taking that one step further, just in your profession, and making sure that people understand what it is that they need? Maybe they realize that they don't have a need, but they need it.
Right. So, I
How
mean,
does that work?
yeah, when people call us, Chase, there is something that has caused them to call my office most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
People don't just call an insurance office for the fun of it, right? So if they're calling me for a quote, something has happened to prompt that. Sometimes it's just rates. Everybody wants lower rates, right? We're all in an
Right.
economy right now that you're looking at every dime and you're trying to make sure that your budget is aligning with that. So sometimes it's just a rate question, and we get that a lot. But other times it's they feel like they weren't taken care of by their agency in a certain situation. They didn't understand what they were dealing with. Sometimes it's great reasons. I just got married, or we just bought a
Mm-hmm.
house. I had a baby, and again, trying to cut rates because now I'm paying for formula and
Right.
diapers and all the expensive things that come with children. So, what we do is we ask a lot of questions. And I know sometimes people are like, why do they need to know this? Like, but we're going to ask what their family situation is, what their work life is, what do they like to do for fun? And that
Mm-hmm.
tells us a lot of things about them, right? First of all, what are their risks? What are we trying to protect? What assets do they have that we want to make sure that we're giving them enough coverage that if they were ever in a lawsuit situation, that it comes out of the State Farm's pocket and not the customer's pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So that is our job. And then we turn around, and now that we have asked those questions, we can better offer the solutions to those problems, the protection for those risks that they have. And that's when it's our duty to explain, here's what liability coverage does for you. Here's what
Mm-hmm.
all these numbers mean, that you get a bill for every month, but here's what it means. And we have people tell us all the time, nobody ever told me that. Nobody's ever sat
I
down and
bet.
explained it. And I enjoy, I start even at the high school level. We have a local teacher who teaches a money skills class, which I think should be in every single class, or every single school. And I go over and I teach them, here's the basics that you need to know about insurance as you're going out into the world. And even those students understand that if you've got 25,000 property damage coverage, that is not going to be enough to pay for a, a new Tahoe if you've just totaled that vehicle,
Right.
right?
Right.
And that's the very basics of it, is making sure that there's enough coverage that it's not being, now you're not being sued and it's going to
Mm-hmm.
be garnished wages or come out of your retirement, or something of that nature.
Yeah, well, and my headspace there went to, it's like, a lot of business owners, and it's like you get into this headspace. People, listeners might be thinking, okay, why are we talking to Katie Farthing about, personal lines of insurance? But your personal life, it's all interwoven in terms of personal and business.
Right.
And sometimes, and I found this in some of my previous experiences, the people that you work with, it's an opportunity to educate them on the things that they need to take care of themselves. And I think of someone in our networking group at BNI, the person that holds the attorney seat. Their weekly ad is pretty consistent, and you're shaking your head with affirmation, in terms of, or validation rather, that I think a lot of times, and I'm curious to hear your take on this. Like, I'm sure there's a shock factor for you, became somewhat normal whenever you see what people have currently, and you think, how have you made it this far and no one has told you either what you have or what you need.
I mean, especially as business owners, right? If that's who we're
Mm-hmm.
talking to today, I tell my business owners, the moment your name is on a sign, people assume that means you have money and that you have
Yes.
assets, right? 90% of the time, we're not really there yet. We're trying, right? A lot of our
Right.
money is going right back into the business. But the assumption is that we have things to sue for. And so
Mm-hmm.
it automatically opens us up to that ability. And so I do. A lot of times I think, okay, you've got a little higher limits on your auto policy, but did anybody talk to you about a personal lines umbrella policy? Do you know what that
Mm-hmm.
means?
Mm-hmm.
That would give you extra coverage over and above auto and home and boat and recreational vehicles, whatever you have,
Right.
that in the event of a lawsuit, you've got extra coverage there that if it's needed. And I
Absolutely.
think that if you are not, I will also say there is a responsibility to the consumer, right? You're responsible to read your policy. You're responsible to know what your coverages mean.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if your agent isn't offering a review on a regular basis, sometimes that all goes through the through the fingers, right? And
Yeah, you're
so
right.
we try to meet with our customers once every couple of years. I get a lot of people who say, no, I'm not interested, right? Nothing's changed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, that's your choice. But at the same time, if you don't know what coverage you have, call and schedule an appointment. Most agents are
Yeah.
willing to talk to you if you
Mm-hmm.
offer, if they don't offer it to you, call them and get
Mm-hmm.
that appointment scheduled, because it's important. That's typically one of the biggest bills that you pay in a month.
Mm-hmm.
right? Your mortgage and insurance are usually your
Yep.
highest. So don't you want to
Yep.
understand what you're paying for,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Well, and you said something important there, Katie. It's that it's their responsibility.
Hmm.
And that is something that I appreciate, is that you're going into these high schools and you're educating them, and they may not walk away being able to articulate what a premium is, what is a deductible, like what does that even mean? But it's so important to ask questions. And like, even if the first question is, can you help me understand?
Right.
And it has amazed me in my work, but also, even just in personal life. Like, that's a skill set that a lot of individuals don't have.
We just assume somebody's going to tell us what we need to know. But here's
Mm-hmm.
the thing, we don't know what we don't know,
Yep.
right? Sometimes I don't even know what questions to ask about
Uh-huh.
HR. Um,
Right.
but if we have that opportunity to sit down, we can
Mm-hmm.
explain the coverages to you. We can ask the questions. People are like, get me a lower rate. Well, let's have a conversation about it, because I don't
Yep.
know even what to offer you in a lower rate until I know a little bit more about you, right?
Absolutely.
I could cut
Absolutely.
all your coverages to the minimum and lower your rate. Is that the best thing for you? Maybe, maybe not. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make the most sense? Maybe or maybe not. So
Yeah.
there's a
Well,
lot of conversation that I feel like needs to happen with when you're talking about insurance.
absolutely. And, and hearing you talk, it's like I'm shaking my head because, albeit the service and product is different, we're talking about an HR versus insurance. However, the conversations are very similar, because I think that there is some truth to the fact, and you're a business operator yourself, so you can maybe add to this, is that business owners have a lot to take into consideration. There's in the business and on the business, and HR falls more on the business. And sometimes business operators are so caught up with the bookkeeping and the financial aspect of it, they just don't know what they don't know. A lot like individuals with insurance, they don't know why they need a higher auto, policy. They don't know what a
Right.
personal umbrella, how that protects them. They don't know about professional liability. You get it. But I think that if there's this level of honesty, just to come to the subject matter expert, and in this case, it's Katie, and just say, I don't know, and
And
then let the conversation go.
right, let me educate you. And then
Yep.
it's ultimately your choice what you want to pay for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
Farms are a big a conversation I have a lot of times with farmers is we can spend every last dime that you have insuring all the things
Oh, I
that you have
bet.
on your farm, right? Because there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
equipment. Same way with business owners. If you want to insure all the little nitty gritty things, but is it important for us to insure this pen? I mean, I can probably replace the one pin. It's all the
Right.
things that really cost you money, right? The
Yeah.
equipment that you have to run to have to operate your business. So we talk
Absolutely.
about what are the things that you have to have in order to operate your business. Let's make sure we get those things covered. A lawn care
Mm-hmm.
owner, if he doesn't have his lawnmowers and weed eaters covered, then how's he going to
Right.
continue his business if somebody steals those, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that would be one example. Farmers the same way, like insure what you have to operate the business. Your antique tractor that's sitting over there that you only take to the tractor pull or whatever, or
Right.
whatever. I mean, yes, there's something value to it, but if it's gone, does it stop your operation? So those are
Right.
the things that we
How
look at too. And then again, it's ultimately the customer's choice to decide what they do and don't want to pay for.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's, you're letting them know how disruptive is this interruption going to be.
Right.
And there's a lot of education in getting them out of their own head to, step back and view this from a bird's eye view, for lack of better terms. And HR is something that I will say a lot in conversations I have, is that, hey, like, we deal in proof, not in truth. And that correlates, I think, to what you're saying, is that antique tractor, I'm not telling you that it's not important, but is there any evidence to show, like, how much, just business interruption will this cause, and how much
Right.
does this need to be insured, if at all, kind of like the pen.
Exactly.
Um,
And it's what's important
so,
to the customer, right?
yes.
If that tractor is very important to the customer, maybe it was their father's or their grandfather's, okay, we'll
Hmm.
insure it, but it's your choice. It's up to the
Absolutely.
customer. And that's why the education piece, I think, is so important, because you don't even know you have those options if you don't have an
Hmm.
agent who is sitting down and talking to you and having a conversation and explaining what your coverages
Oh
are.
yeah. Well, 110%. And, that also correlates so beautifully with HR, because it's always going to be the owner's choice,
Right.
the operator's choice. And even in small businesses, it's like, you absolutely can. Like, I used a goofy example last week with someone and said, like, if you want to hire if your credential, or your requirement rather, for hiring is everyone has to listen to T-Pain on their way into work, you can do that. Now, you reap the consequences of that,
Right.
but you can do that. And I'm sure for you, there's a lot of conversations like that too. You can make that decision,
That's right.
but it's my job to educate you of the implications of that, if you do or you don't.
Yeah.
So,
And, I've seen a lot of situations where somebody chose not to maybe put full coverage on their vehicle, and then something happened that was out of their control, but now they're without a vehicle and we're not paying them any money for it, right? So, I mean, I can speak from experience. I've been doing this for 24 years now, so I can speak from experience of, well, here's what could happen if you make that choice, right?
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's a practical aspect of it, because, you know, the social age, and we won't get down this rabbit trail, but there's a lot of fear based. You think of Morgan and Morgan, there's a lot of
Hmm.
fear based marketing strategies. And I think people appreciate, well, let me just tell you about when this happened, and it happened right here in this town with another member of this community. It
Right,
can
exactly.
happen.
Yes. And I have many of those
Um,
stories.
oh, I bet you could. I bet your, like, after dinner conversations are just very interesting.
If people want to talk about insurance, yes.
Yeah. I relate to that too. It's like, hey, let's talk about HR.
Right.
I get it and I resonate. So, like, segueing in a little bit, Katie, you touched on at the beginning, like, your professional story in terms of just being in the insurance industry, but you've not always. So you manage a team of people currently, and that's
Right.
not something that you've always done.
No, so
So,
my history with State Farm is long and storied. So my dad became a State Farm agent when I was 6 months old. He is still an agent in Frankfort, Kentucky. I'm very proud of him. So I'm a second generation State Farm agent. I worked for him in his office when I was a teenager, and I thought it was the most boring thing in the world. And I said, I will never work in insurance. Well,
never
never
say
say
never.
never.
Yeah.
So my husband and I met when I was in college. He already had a farm here in Garrett County, and so when we got married, I started working at the local bank. And not too far into that gig, I got fussed at because I wasn't taking a long enough lunch break. They gave us an hour, and I was not taking a full hour. By the way, I'm a workhorse. I don't, we'll say
Yeah.
that too. So I worked too far away from home to try to get home during a lunch break and back within that hour. So I just went up to say hi to the local State Farm agent who I knew from time with my dad. So a week later, he called me and offered me a job. Of course, a large pay raise, which because bankers do not get paid very well.
Right. Right.
So I went to work for him for about 5 years. He got me licensed for my insurance products and also in securities, which was very unheard of at the time. And securities
Mm-hmm.
products is what allows us to do the mutual funds and variable products and that sort of thing. So I worked for him for about 5 years, and then I went to work for another agent for 12 years who really taught me more about the sales process and how to connect with people and marketing. Learned a lot from him as well. So I did not open my own office until December of 2017. 7 years this month. It's been a blast. What's interesting to me though is because I lived in Garrett County, but I always worked in Madison.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not really very well known in Garrett County. And the first
Okay.
thing I had to do was introduce myself and say, hey, I've lived here for 18 years. You just haven't known
Mm-hmm.
me.
Right.
Um, and just I jumped in with both feet. I came on the chamber board pretty quickly, which helped me to get to know people quite a bit, and just everything I could be seen at, I went to. I
Mm-hmm.
would just scour the Facebook pages and the newspaper trying to figure out what events are happening.
Okay.
So for me, I worked as a team member for a lot of years, which I
Mm-hmm.
think gives me a very good perspective of what my team feels and thinks and
I
hopes
love
and
that.
wants. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I really play back to, if I was still the team member, what would I want my boss to do in this situation?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Well, I love that. I was having a conversation with another business owner, and it's a unique situation in that it's sort of like there are two managers and they're on an equal level, but one of the managers, their team has a tremendous amount of empathy for them. And that was the feedback that I had provided. It's like, they see you as leader, but they see your counterpart as boss, and there's a difference in the two.
True, very true.
Um, and so I love that you have that perspective as, you are one of them. And to correlate this to basketball, it's like Mark Pope. Every fight, not that there's been a ton that has broken out this year, he's the first one.
Yep.
He's the first one, but he still has that degree of separation. He knows his
Right.
role
Right.
as leader, but he's the first one in the pulling his team back. So this is what you said there segues into this next question I have for you, in that shift of mindset, but also in knowing that, hey, not only am I responsible for like these people's paychecks, I'm also responsible for some aspect of their on the job satisfaction and mental happiness.
Yes.
What are some strategies that you would offer other small business operators that have the stresses that you do, when it comes to managing teams and keeping them satisfied on the job?
So, first, let me say I love my team. Each one of them has been an answer to a prayer, literally. And I tell them that. They
Mm-hmm.
know that they are an answer to prayer and that I appreciate them. I do not just think it in my head, I speak it to them. And I think
Which goes a
that's
long way.
so important,
Yes.
because interestingly enough, several of them would probably say that prior employers did not make them feel appreciated in any way. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's sad. I think as employers, we need to consider they're humans too. They need
Absolutely.
the encouragement and the praise, just like we want
Mm-hmm.
it, from the big awards or whatever that we may get.
You're right.
Um, but we get along well. We like to have fun. Um,
Mm-hmm.
this week and next, today I'm in red because it's red versus green day. But we're doing some fun dress up days. We do that from time to time. We also have fun things that we go out of the office and do, such as we went to a play, an outdoor play this year. We went and did a paint party together. We try to find things
I
to
love that.
do outside of the office too, which I think has really helped secure the relationship. I will say too that this was a struggle for me, coming from a team member to being the main leader. I was a leader in my office previously, but I wasn't the boss, and it's a different level. um, but so I love listening to podcasts. As soon as I heard about Chase's, I hopped on because I'm like, I can learn some HR stuff.
Yeah.
uh, so podcasts, find some good ones, and I read a lot of books. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've just taken little snippets. I got myself a business coach early on, who has helped me tremendously. So I feel like I've really grown into that role. It took me time because I wouldn't necessarily say I'm like a fun and jovial person, but I can be that way if I need to.
Uh-huh.
So I've learned how to, up it a little bit, but I also really rely on my team. They'll say, "Okay, Katie, are we going to do this?" I'm like, "Sure." Whatever you
Right.
all want to do. If that's what you want to do, I'm fine with that. Like, what I need to do to get it together, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so we also just really I just try to show them that I appreciate them, right? I give them opportunities inside and outside of the office. We have a puzzle board. We keep a puzzle up at the office because I know that they all have a little bit of anxiety, and myself included, right?
Uh-huh.
And sometimes we just need a break. And so they'll go throw a couple of pieces in that puzzle board, and it's just
I
enough
love that.
for them to take a moment, take a breath, and then they can go back to their job. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
really disruptive of anybody else, right? If
Yeah.
one person wants to go, they can. Sometimes two or more will be up there, but I think that really has been an interesting, and customers love that. They'll come in and see
Oh,
that,
I bet.
and they'll throw some pieces in, and we'll say,
Oh,
"Hey, this one's
really?
really hard. Help us out," so
I love that. I love
so
that. I didn't know that
it's
you
been
did
good.
that. That's awesome.
Yeah, we do that. Now right now Christmas decorations are up and in the way, so we don't have any
Yeah.
puzzle out right now, but so I mean
I love that
just
though.
all the little things, we meet
Mm-hmm.
bi-weekly. So twice a week we're getting together and we're talking about, okay, what's the schedule for the week? What numbers are we trying to hit, right? We're a sales agency.
Mm-hmm.
I make no apologies for that. Um, who have you talked to this week? You
Mm-hmm.
got any good quotes? Who have you connected with? What are we
Mm-hmm.
doing business
I
wise? Are
love
we
that.
hitting the numbers we're supposed to hit? All of those things are important to our company and our agency in order to continue to grow and build. But we talk about that regularly. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that's important too. Is just that communication piece with my team has been
Mm-hmm.
huge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have any secrets from them. They know where we
Yeah.
are,
I love
and they
that.
know where we're trying to get to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you know, what you've said there is just so impactful, and it wasn't profound, which sounds like a contradiction. But, and I'm sure, you work with businesses too. And it always shocks me in talking with people how they just don't talk to their team.
Yeah.
And that is something that's impressed me with you, is that you do talk to your team. And not only does that impact, we'll call it performance optimization, because you know what they're doing, you know where their efforts are going, and you're also able to tell them how those efforts are impacting their overall goals and how their
Right.
individual goals feed into the agency's goals. You know,
Yes.
you just shared that. But if people are not talking to their individuals, how do they have a temperature check? But
Right.
also, there's not an ability to organically form those special bonds.
Right.
Um, and, like you can sit down with person A and you know that that person might need a little more validation. So maybe you take the time to write a thank you card to them. That way they can keep it and take it home and share it with their family.
Right. Exactly.
But then you talk to person B and they're obsessed right now with the Pat Summit documentary. And maybe you know that they just need 5 minutes to express that to you. And those little just micro moments, we'll call them, are just impactful, but a lot of
Right.
business owners don't make the time to do it.
And let me tell you, until I literally put it on the calendar, it wasn't happening regularly.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, I need to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And then it would be a month, and I'm like, oh, I never had that conversation. And I'm still irritated about it. Right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we have on the calendar our team meetings each week. So on Wednesdays, I have, we call it our service team meeting, which is everybody. But it's more focused on the service aspects of what we do, right? Because we don't just write business, we're trying to keep the business we already have. So we want to make sure that our service levels are high, that we're taking care of customers, that nothing's fallen through the cracks if at all possible.
Mm-hmm.
Fridays are our sales team meetings. So we specifically talk about the sales aspect of things, and do a little bit of training on some of our products and that sort of thing. But then I also have monthly on the calendar reviews with my team members each month. And until I got it on the calendar, it was not happening regularly. We think we're going to get to it, and it just doesn't. So
Right.
I would highly encourage anybody to put it on a calendar. We look at
Mm-hmm.
a quarter at a time, and what are we doing this quarter together to have
Mm-hmm.
fun? What are we doing next
Mm-hmm.
quarter together to have fun?
Mm-hmm.
But put it on the calendar. Really,
Mm-hmm.
that made a huge difference for me.
Yeah. Well, and what sort of, I guess there's also an element too. I'm curious to hear your input on this. Is there's an element of having grace for yourself too? Because, at the beginning, there probably wasn't a ton of time to be intentional with that. But
No.
I imagine you never lost sight of where you needed to get to eventually.
Well, and my prior bosses did not really do that. We would have a weekly meeting, but we didn't really ever have one-on-one meetings. And so I found that I was like, do I want to do that or not? Is it just a waste of time? What are we going to talk about? So I have an agenda and we use it every time. They know
I
when
love
they
that.
come in, some of the things we're going to talk about are their numbers and their production. But I'm also going to ask them, what went really well for you? What do you think you're doing
Mm-hmm.
good? You know,
Mm-hmm.
what are things that you feel like you need to work on? We're going to
Mm-hmm.
talk about their attendance. And then at the end of the meeting, I'm going to say, what was your biggest achievement in the last 30 days? And they
I love
struggle
that.
with that question every single time because we're not good at complimenting ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just to encourage them to think about, you did something good this month. What was it? I know you did at least one good thing.
Well, and I also, there's something about getting in that routine of talking about performance because it's really hard as humans
Hmm.
to take subjective experience and make them subjective experiences and make them as objective as possible.
Right.
And having that routine, you're also teaching your team members, you touched on there how to brag on themselves, but it's not so much as bragging on themselves. I'm sure it feels that way. It
Yes.
would to me too. But it's being able to objectively assess something good you've done that your manager, in this case you, needs to know about and cares to hear about.
Right. And it doesn't even always have to be business, right?
Mm-hmm.
It may be, hey, I lost 5 pounds this month. You know what I mean? Or it could be, I got my kids ready for school,
Yeah, exactly.
in August, right? Like I got everything the kids needed for school and we're there. We made it
Mm-hmm.
through XYZ at home, so it can be anything. It doesn't have to be work related and they know that.
Yeah,
But
and
that,
that's
sometimes
perfect.
we're in a negative world, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we are in such a negative world, and anything I can do to encourage and uplift and make them think positively, I'm for that. Let's do that.
Absolutely. Well, and I love that you say that because from the HR perspective, if more business owners had that mentality, you think of, work. I believe there's fireworks in the background here, and I don't know how that happened,
I
but I love
love it.
it. Work is
That's
fireworks.
hilarious.
Work is a basic, it is a human need. I think it's the two thumbs up. So I'm going to just put my hands down. Now I'm like having a complex of all these fireworks back here.
Oh, that's awesome.
That must be a profound statement. Um, so work, just like sleep, eating, drinking, in my opinion, is a basic need. And my faith also tells me, when you look back at the essence of creation, God placed Adam and Eve, they had an obligation to tend to the earth.
Yeah.
There is something that is satisfactory about work, that it does something for us. And knowing that most people work, if more business owners had that mentality of how can I provide this basic human need, and I'm not even talking in the context of money and income,
Right.
but also make it as smooth as possible while building them up and truly discipling people, it would just, the world would be a different place.
Well, I feel really compelled to say too that my team also knows that they can count on me. So
Absolutely.
if there's a customer that comes in, we get angry people. We work with the public. I've had customers come in waving stuff around their bill,
Oh,
mad,
man.
whatever.
Yeah.
As soon as I hear that person, if I'm in the office, my office is in the back, I'm at the front. Like just immediately. They know they can count on me. We had a customer recently who was, it's just a struggle and a hard situation. And I was like, y'all don't talk to this person anymore. I'll take care of it. I will talk to them every time they call. Like they know that they can count on me to take care of the hard stuff sometimes if needed. Now, I don't do that all the time because that's why I've hired them, right? But when push comes to serve, they know I've got their back. But I also know they would have mine if the situation was reversed. So I
I
think
love
that
that.
a lot of times we just are like, well, they're my employees. They have to do all the hard stuff. I don't have to do the hard stuff. I could sit back and be the CEO of my office, but what is that teaching them, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is when I'm dealing with those hard situations, they are listening. Like the office is silent. I'm back there on the phone talking to this person, and I can tell every one of them is listening to the words that I'm saying. And it gives them permission to have those same conversations, those hard conversations with the customers too, in a
Yes.
respectful manner,
Mm-hmm.
taking care of it, but also
Mm-hmm.
being, I don't want to say forceful or mean, but here's how it is. Some things we can't change, right? Like you have to pay your bill,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Um,
Right.
Again, it goes back to the responsibility of the customer, but it gives my team permission to be able to say, okay, that's how she handled that. Now I know how to handle that, right?
Absolutely.
But they also
Absolutely.
know push comes to shove, I've got their back.
Mm-hmm.
I will take care of things. I will defend them. You know,
Like Mark Pope on
He's
Saturday.
right there. I really hope we
Yes.
do not become a fighting team, though. I will say that.
I agree. I do
But
agree with
yeah,
that.
Mark is right there. He's making sure his people are taken care of, and I've loved watching him. We could get
Mm-hmm.
off on a whole segment about UK basketball, but we won't do that. But yes, I really think that they know that I'll get down and dirty with them if I need to.
We should do that. Like, get a still shot. It's been going around on Facebook of like Mark Pope in the middle of the Louisville bench and just
Yes,
put it like next to your monitor, because it's like
right.
that image is it.
Yes.
That image is it, and that's all
He's
I can
not
think about.
throwing punches, but he's
No.
there, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
taking care of his people.
Yep, and he's pulling them back. It's like,
Right.
we're redirecting. Let's redirect here. And I love that. But I will close on a Pat Summitt quote. And it came to my mind here too, and that they won't care how much you know if they don't know how much you care.
Very true.
And that's just the essence of it all. And that goes for more, of course, than just your team, but it goes for your clients. And I think that you, Katie, you speak that in everything that you do. And even when you were talking about your time whenever you had just started your business in Lancaster, you, despite living there for 18 years, people didn't know who you were, and they're not going to care how much you know or how much time you've invested in the insurance industry if they didn't know who Katie was. And you understood that, and you show people your heart in everything that you do. Katie is in our BNI group, and you're not one of the newest members, but you're still new-ish.
Fairly new,
but you're number one. Like you're top every week.
And I'm always
on the
shocked
metric.
at that. Let me say that.
Yeah. Well, and it's because and even that, like, you show people who you are, and everyone knows why you do what you do, and it's because that you care. And I appreciate that about you, and I appreciate your time today. It's been a really good conversation, and you have a lot to offer, not just to your team, but to those in your sphere.
I appreciate the opportunity, and one of the things that I just love to help people. And I think if you just really focus outward in whatever you're doing, in your business aspect, in your team aspect, in your whatever, everywhere, if you think outward instead of just holding up inside, then I don't think you can go wrong. If you're constantly
Right.
thinking about how can I help others, and that's just that's how I grew up. My dad wanted to know why, what did I like about banking, and I said I just like to help people, and he said I get to do that every day, and
I love
I
that.
get to do that every day in one way or another. I'm finding a way to help people. I want to make people's lives enjoyable and better, and protect them. And we're there in the hard times. We're there in the good times. But I just like to help people, and I get to do that, and I'm in the perfect place to do that. So
You absolutely are.
but
You
thank you
absolutely
very
are.
much for your opportunity here to talk to your people, and I'll
Yeah, of
continue
course.
sharing your podcast because I do enjoy it.
I appreciate that, Katie, and I appreciate those of you who took the time to listen to our conversation today, and make it a great day. Hope hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Overall HR. If you'd like to hear more conversations on all things HR without having to visit your HR, subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcasts, and maybe even share with a friend, and leave a review too. Hope to see you next week on the show. Make it a good one.